And now it's time for tonight's presentation. Whoa, that's a cool little logo. So Jill and Sylvie, please come up, and I'll try to. Oh my goodness. Yes. Bottom right. Oh, there it is.
Do the after crowd.
Hi everyone. So I'm Sylvie, this is Jill, and we are Cyanosleuth. This is a project that we started up this past summer through a hackathon called AquaHacking, and for Lake Erie, which provides citizen science for Lake Erie. So cyano for cyanobacteria, we'll explain more about that later, and sleuth for detecting, hence why I'm a detective. And Jill, Mother Nature, in case you didn't quite catch what this costume is. So we both come from more of the scientific and water background, so I've been working in stormwater for a while, and I'm an engineer. Jill's an ecologist and runs her own consulting firm, specifically around cyanobacteria and algae blooms. So we're not very into this whole like techie world or hackathon world, so this was like a totally new experience for us. So we're going to talk about the product that we came up with, Cyanosleuth. Before that, we'll talk about the problem and how we came to our solution. And then we'll end off with our reflections on the whole hackathon experience and just like, and because you guys are going to break out and do working groups, we'll end with some problems that we see in the water sector as well. I think that's about it. Yeah, okay. So general overview of the problem. People are affected by toxic algae blooms on Lake Erie, but also in other small lakes around North America and the world, really. People want to know more about their water. Like, is it safe to swim? Is it safe to drink? Questions like that. Scientists also want to know more about our water and how algae blooms are formed. It's still an area where we don't have a lot of science yet. So that's sort of the general overview, and I'm going to pass it along to Jill to get more specific about what are algae blooms and cyanobacteria and all that stuff. Yeah.
So why we are more concerned about algae blooms is they are becoming more and more concerned in Ontario and Canada and the rest of the world. Climate change is only going to make things worse. A little bit about algae versus cyanobacteria. Algae, so there is algae and then there is cyanobacteria. They are not the same, but cyanobacteria fall under the algae category. So from here on out in the presentation, we're going to use the word algae. But both algae and cyanobacteria can bloom. They can form that scum in the water. They do cost a lot of tourism dollars. So there is aesthetic problems, there's odors, there's visual, there's economic losses. And put your hand up if I start to fade away again, so I'll drop the microphone. Not all blooms are toxic, but some can be very toxic to humans and livestock. So basically, a very toxic bloom can cause death. So, I forgot my own little animation there, sorry. I wanted to know if anyone could actually identify the cyanobacteria bloom there in the pictures, but now I just gave it all away. And the cyanobacteria is there on your left-hand side. But you can have the small little critters, the zooplankton in the water, also forming blooms. So what you see is scumming up in the water may not necessarily be a toxic algae bloom at all. So why the mystery? Why are we having such problems investigating cyanobacteria? Is because that they reside in different places. They kind of hide out on you. Some cyanobacteria, just going to keep on talking. Some cyanobacteria are visible and you will see the problem on the surface of the water. Other cyanobacteria hang out below the surface of the water and they can either clump up or they can stay dispersed. So again, you can have a high concentration of cyanobacteria or it can be very spread out. So we also don't know what it takes to be a concentrated mass. We're still talking numbers in the industry. What makes it toxic and what makes it a high density of cyanobacteria. There's the other problem is when they hide out way below the visible area. They actually lay on the bottom of the lakes or they attach to things. So again, they're also finding that these mapid or these out-of-sight cyanobacteria have the potential to be toxic as well. So in a nutshell, they're really mysterious and they're hard to predict when blooms are coming, especially when we don't even see the bloom in the first place. So jumping ahead to toxicity, we don't know, as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, sometimes it's just a green bloom, sometimes it's a zooplankton bloom, but if it's a cyanobacteria bloom, and in my world we use the word potential toxicity. Not all blooms are toxic. Even some cyanobacteria are not toxic. And to make that further complicated, at some times of year, the same cyanobacteria are or are not toxic. So you just don't know by looking at scummy water if it's toxic or not. So we have a few different methods for analyzing toxicity. We have rapid field tests that we use right beside the water. We also have analytical tests, which you send it back to the lab. Now clearly it's more accurate if you send it back to the lab to get more definitive results, but what we call as the field tests are just screening tests, and those are what we're going to talk about soon in our prototype here. But in a nutshell, you got a rapid test, and then we have other types of laboratory tests, everything to do with enzyme tests, spectrophotometer tests, and I'm going to confuse half of you if you're not in the industry here, genetic tests, and plain old microscope tests for determining, or at least potentially determining the toxicity of a bloom. So, many options. Oh, right. Recently, especially in 2017, mid to late summer, a lot of the conservation authorities and or local health units have stopped beach monitoring. The primary reason was because these results that I just talked about, like the laboratory results for toxicity, are 1 to 2 days to 2 weeks before you get the answers back or the results back. So what they're finding is that it's the data is now out of date. It's untimely data. It's also expensive. So you can post a warning sign on a shoreline saying water is safe to swim or not safe to swim, but basically by the time the results come back, that sign that's posted on the shoreline may be very wrong. So it was actually proving to be more problematic posting signs without outdated data. It's also very expensive, and they don't have the staff or personnel to do this constant beach warning. And the last problem is, what if you do post this water is not safe to swim, and you close down a beach recreationally, you close it down, but the water is safe a week later. No one gets back to tell you when you can come swim again. So they're just leaving it now, these warning signs, or they're posting warning signs on shorelines, basically leaving it to the consumer or the recreational user's discretion on how to determine if the water is safe to swim. A little bit problematic.
Yeah, so with all of that in mind, we wanted to come up with a product that was going to be easy for people to use, interesting, so that they'll get information that they actually want out of it, and would work, quickly and easily, as well as helping out the scientist side of things. So, what areas do have algae toxicity? What areas have nutrients that could form blooms? All those kind of questions. So what we came up with is Cyanosleuth. It's a hardware and software device that will, so on the hardware side, there's a test kit that would analyze for algae toxicity, algae presence, and some nutrients as well. So people would take a sample, put it into the hardware device, then using your phone and the software component, take a picture of those test results and upload those to the web. All of our tests are going to be color tests, color change tests, or like in this picture back here, with the different shades and lines. So something that the computer could recognize and then automatically determine, okay, that means it's this color or it's this thickness of line, therefore it's this result. So people can get results on that. This is a little bit about what we're going to test.
So as I mentioned, I'm just going to screen past this one. We are going to be testing the algae toxins, but specifically microcystin, for those of you in the industry, will know it's one of the most prevalent toxins and the most potent toxins, and because it persists in the water a very long time. So it's the one we most frequently study and look at and regulate too. So again, that's microcystin, based on the actual cyanobacteria called microcystis. The other thing we're going to look at for the presence of algae, and it's just chlorophyll A we're looking at with our built-in spectrophotometer. So again, you just want to know if there's high algae loads in the water before then you go on to the toxicity testing part of the kit. And the other thing, the research scientists, so those are more what the sleuths or the beach goers would want to know about. Then we have the ones up a level, which the scientists or the researchers would want to investigate, and it's basically trend tracking. We're also hoping to analyze nutrients, specifically the primary growth factor nutrients, which are nitrogen and phosphorus, and that will be the color change test.
And then how we'll put them together is through microfluidics. So if you haven't heard of this term before, some pictures on the right show some examples of microfluidics. Back in about 2008, lab on a chip became a really big thing. So being able to take fluid and then disperse it to a whole bunch of different, like a droplet of fluid, and disperse it to a whole bunch of tests quickly and easily on, like a piece of paper, a piece of plastic. That became really popular as like a diagnostic tool that could be used in the developing world. So different blood tests. But really, it could be used for any fluid, and I think it's really only a matter of time before this stuff gets applied to water quality as well. So that's what we were thinking. This thing that's being used a lot in the developing world on blood tests, why not use it here for doing really easy water quality tests? And then on the left is a little mock-up of our device. So like you would slide the microfluidics part into some sort of chamber for where you would place your phone on top to take pictures to upload it to the app. Here's some screenshots from our app. So the idea would be people who are registered with us could get alerts about when a bloom might be in their area, which we can get from satellite imagery, or there's a whole bunch of different possibilities there. They can see, if they open up the app, they can see, oh, hey, there's a bloom risk, low, medium, high in their area. If they have the test kits, then they can get guidance on how to do those tests. And then once the images are uploaded, analyzed, they can get results right away on whether it's safe to swim, and then the results of the nutrients as well, if they're interested in that. And this is more for interested on the pitch side. So we're not going to go into big detail on the business model. The business model is basically there's the sleuths who will buy the test kits and perform the tests, and add all that scientific data to our database. And then we've got the non-sleuths, so groups that could pay for access to those test results. So we're seeing sleuths as like people who live on cottages on lakes where algae blooms are an issue, or people who are just out swimming, out boating, want to know about the status of the water in their area. And the non-sleuths as, say, like water utilities that want to see like overall trend data from across a lake or a stream. And then water utilities are some of the things. Yeah, we have others. Oh yeah, right, researchers. So people who might be interested in like modeling the overall lake. Do you want to say anything more about the product? Okay. There's going to be Q&A time as well. So I mentioned at the beginning that we were part of AquaHacking. This has been started by the De Gaspé-Lopien, which is a foundation out of Quebec. And they've done it for the past 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. Yeah, since 2015. And so they do plan on doing it next year. So if this sounds of interest to you, you can check it out for next year as well. What made it different from your standard hackathon was that it was like really like long term. So it started off in April or something like that, and then the semifinals were in June. So we were one of the 5 teams selected as semifinalists, and we went to the finals in September. So between June and September, we had some funding from the AquaHacking group that we could use towards advancing our product, and then just the expectation that we would get a lot further along. So what was great about this was that it really gave us a kick in the pants to do a lot of work. I don't think we ever would have developed this if it weren't for other people thinking this was exciting and therefore we should do it. But it was also a really different experience for us, like thinking about the business side of a scientific product. We know our clients really well. These are people that Jill particularly has worked with. They're her clients. So we know who would want this product, and we can see that there's a lot of demand for it. Like what price? What does that work out to in terms of our overall revenue projections? These were all like new things for us. And then presenting that in a succinct way out of pitch was definitely a challenge, especially making ourselves like look snazzy and so on, because that's not how we generally do like scientific or engineering presentations. Yeah. Some other general thoughts on that. So like our product I see innovations coming. Everyone's using innovation as like a really big buzzword right now, and where I think we're generally trying to stay away from all the buzzwords. We saw a specific need for a product, like people care about their water quality and want different ways to test it, and we're like, okay, let's figure out a way that we can do that. Our innovation is really bringing together existing technologies like the microfluidics and like image recognition on phone, like using existing technologies and putting them together for a problem that no one else in the marketplace is really addressing right now. So I guess my advice for people going on to these hackathons is, like an app isn't a solution to everything. Not everything needs an app. So try to think about what your problem is really deeply, really know that well, so that you can find the most innovative way to go for that. We really breezing through this. So for our wrap up, we're just going to talk about what we see as a couple of the big problems in the water sector. And during the breakout session, we can position ourselves at 1 or 2 tables, depending on how this goes, and we do like leave that time as well. So I'll let you talk about nutrients, and I'm going to talk about this. Yeah.
Okay, so back to the nutrients again. I want to talk about a bit of legacy effects. We talk about cleaning up our waterways all the time, and Sylvie's going to talk about maybe possibly monitoring the waterways. But when we talk about cleaning our water, whether it's a diffuse inputs to the streams or point source inputs to the streams, we're pretty good, and we have been tackling point source inputs to the streams, like lower phosphates and detergents and stormwater ponds in development areas. But legacy effects is when particularly the phosphorus is already sitting there in the water, and it sort of settles out to the bottom. It's now trapped in the sediment. So you can now have a bunch of fresh water hitting your waterway. And what's going to happen is you think you've got cleaner water in the environment coming in, and now it's going to start to desorb into the water column. So again, we can tackle our current issues, but what we have to start also thinking about is historical issues, because that phosphorus, and I know I've done work on it, it will desorb from the sediment in massive amounts that will far outdo some of the good work you've done. So it's just one thing to consider is what has already been done to the environment, and how do we deal with that, as well as how do we go forward.
Yeah, and the problem I want to talk about is climate change and extreme weather events. So we have a lot of river monitoring throughout the city, throughout our province. So we have some good monitoring data to go from for like when the river might flood. But we're finding more and more that our, especially with population growth and urbanization, that we're getting a lot of urban flooding, and that's a little harder to predict than just straight up river flooding. And not, we're not monitoring water levels on streets, for example. So another thing to think about is how to protect people from flooding in urban areas. Right. So that kind of fits into my other side interest, which is stormwater management and green infrastructure. So if anyone's interested in talking about that, I can lead on that. And then just some, to end on some public questions. So are there issues that would benefit from the public knowing about their water use? So that would come from the individual water use in their houses or in their businesses. And are there forms of citizen science that could help, say, public entities like water utilities do their job better? So just some thoughts to leave you guys with. And we will open it up to Q&A.
question with the design. You guys briefly touched on this idea of like the results, right? So I imagine that part of the business model has to be reliability. And yeah, again, I sort of briefly touched on it. So just to confirm that the results are just these three colors, kind of like a street light, that everyone can, that there can be no ambiguity on what the results are. Is that the case?
So we are still prototyping our product, so we can't say anything like, you know, we've gotten this much accuracy, yada yada. So that's a work in progress.
So we've actually spoken about the liability, and it will come with a lot of caveats to the device. Similar to the beach warning signs, this is only an advice. It will say possibly a check mark, safe to swim, but there's also going to be a bunch of information around that and a user startup package. But yeah, it's something we need to further explore with the lawyers. Yes.
But yeah, essentially color change will be how insurance reliable.
So I just want to understand your business model better, just to grasp my head around it. You mentioned that there will be consumers who, I'm guessing, will have this kit. Pardon my fingers, it's long, sorry. So there will be people who will buy the kit, which they can then connect or use an app to figure out and get results from, and then you will capture the data and be able to advise them water is safe or not, provide whatever safe you can say, and then you will then essentially crowdsource that data to sell to other researchers or companies that may be interested in the data. I guess where I'm getting confused is like, you know, why am I using your tool product to test if my water is safe, and then have you give that my data away to someone else in return for you to implement? I guess I'm confused about that.
I think that's a two-part. So why use our tool first is the first question, because the existing toxicity testing is very expensive if you're going to buy a whole kit. There's a couple of competitors in the market right now, but it's $900+ to buy a package of 20, etc. So,
And hard.
and very complicated, a lot of steps. And again, subject to color interpretation by your eye. So it's very difficult, it's costly. So if you use our kit, it's done for you, it's in micro, it's on a chip, so you'll use less amounts at a fraction of the cost. And we are trying to put, we don't want to give a price point, but we have talked to our clients. Some of our clients are willing to go as much as $20 per test versus $32 to $90. We're actually off the record. We're trying to push it well below that. So actually people do multiple tests because the more populated our database, the better. And that's also word of mouth will be our best marketing strategy. And it's also going to take 1 or 2 times until you begin to trust your own ability to use it, even though the app will take care of it for you. But so that's why I use ours, because the Fluidics, the device does all the work for you. You put the drop on, and it does it for you. And we're just trying to really bring the price point down, because most of the time, especially my clients, say, I don't want to spend $20, $30 on a test. I'll just not go swimming. And that's your whole summer gone.
Yeah, and for the other questions, so on selling data. So people who are our users who have bought kits would be able to see other data, say if they're in that area. However, the aggregated data, so like the download of spreadsheet, like here are all the test results for this summer. That's something that like sleuths wouldn't have access to, but probably wouldn't want anyways. So that would be for the institutional users, so the researchers or the water utilities, and so they're more interested in like water quality trends over time. And really there isn't another data set like this. So if you look at Lake Erie, there's a few water quality monitoring stations on it. Those are in fixed locations. So we're hoping to have more like geographically dispersed data so that that can be more useful for those institutions. And more timely, yeah.
Is your device recyclable, like, or is it disposable?
So is it recyclable or is it disposable?
Well, so the microfluidic portion of it, can use it once or can be used multiple times?
Yeah, so for the microfluidics part itself, that would be disposable. For the component, the cartridge to put it in for taking the pictures from, that would be reusable.
We're actually addressing that as well. We wanted to know if we could actually assess the chlorophyll level first, and if the chlorophyll levels come in really low, so the algae abundance is low, then you would actually save on the cost of the most expensive part, which is the toxin test. So again, we almost might have a staged usage of the device to bring the price point down and to save some of the strips as well.
Is it a biohazard? Suppose you get some cyanobacteria on it. Does it become a biohazard?
We're talking about 5 mils. Don't drink it, but you can actually get it on your hand and wipe it off on your hands if you want. Because people do swim in slightly bluing water. It's just don't ingest it. So as a biohazard, no more than it would have been 2 steps away in the water.
One more question? Awesome.
So one of the challenges, really interesting project, really interesting idea for you guys by it. One of the other things that causes beach closures is E. coli contamination. 123 CFUs per 100 mil is your beach closure limit, and that's a surrogate for cryptogiardia risk, right? So from that perspective, is there a risk that a user could say, hey, the algae's low, ergo it's safe to swim, get the E. coli? And also the follow-on question to that is there an opportunity for you to extend this to some of the other biological targets that really do form a complete picture of what the beach closure situation would be from a biological perspective?
Thanks for asking the question. We wanted someone to ask.
And I did not prompt you. That was not a planned question.
So it's a simple concept with like endless possibilities for water quality tests to tap on. So that's where we wanted to go next, was E. coli.
Can't say much, but we're in talks. We're addressing that. We're actually in talks about adapting the E. coli, probably faster than some of our own native components. But yes, we have thought about it, and we are currently working on the E. coli. And again, legality on safe to swim. But I think it's going to have some big disclaimer right there, smack dab in the center of the screen for the following criteria. So it's just a legally used thing.
And yeah, and beyond E. coli, there's other water quality things that we can be concerned about that we can test for, totally add on.
We're out of time. Thank you so much for the presentation. Go around, ask your own other questions.